Hello, my name is Andrew Forber, and this is my Quad City Challenger XL65 Advanced Ultralight airplane, which I am putting up for sale. I built this plane between 2013 and 2016. It is the XL65 model, so 65 horsepower, wing tanks, hydraulic brakes, pretty fully equipped aircraft, and I'm selling it because of medical issues. I really don't want to, but you know what they say, that's life. When you gotta stop, you gotta stop. This is a pretty well equipped aircraft. It has a lot of custom features designed to improve the maintainability and to be nice to fly without adding a whole lot of weight. This is by no means the heaviest XL65 you will see. There are features that make it comfortable to fly in, including the custom interior that you can see now. This is the last, I believe, set of cushions ever manufactured by Turbulence, Jean-Claude, based in Quebec, before he retired and sold the upholstery business to the company in Ontario. I bought them quite early before the aircraft was finished being built, so that I knew I would have them because I had heard that he was retiring. It also includes the side panels, because I like my airplanes like I like my trousers, with lots of pockets. So it has three quite large useful pockets in the cockpit, all zippered shut, for holding things like maps and checklists. You'll see the custom checklist sitting on the seat here, and the fuel testing equipment and so on. In terms of the general construction of the aircraft, it was built to the factory standards, of course, with a few additional odds and ends, as I said, to make maintenance easier and to make sure that it flew well and was light. The XL65 has general features. You shouldn't confuse this with a Challenger 2. The Challenger 2 is a great airplane. It's lighter weight. It's not as solidly built as an XL65. Part of the reason for that is that the wing tanks, each side has 10 gallons, 10 US gallons of fuel, and that means that there's also a baggage space inside the airplane. The fact that the wings also support the weight of the fuel means that they're built more solidly. And also, this plane, being an XL65, has a gross weight of 1,060 pounds, which is actually 260 pounds more than the original Challenger 2 was, at 800 pounds. And that's enough with wheels to carry 2 passengers and pretty much full fuel without any trouble. It's less than that on floats. It's pretty much a single person airplane unless you're quite light when on floats, if you want to carry any fuel with you at all. You'll notice that sitting on top of the fuselage there is a parachute. That's a BRS 1050 ballistic recovery parachute, which is designed in the case of a severe emergency to allow the pilot to stop the engine, pull a handle, and float gently to the ground. That costs, just the unit mounted there, costs between 35 and 40 pounds of gross weight, and could be removed. I've often considered removing it, but it was a spousally mandated piece of equipment. My wife wanted me to always have it there. These days, she's more confident in the aircraft, of course. This particular plane has a brand new engine. It's a Rotax Model 582. This is a Model 17. I had a maintenance issue with my old engine that was the original engine on this airplane, and I replaced it completely after a failure. And so this is a brand new engine, including the run-up and all of the other flying that I've done since I put the new engine on earlier this year. I have a 5¼ hours of hop time on the engine for about 2½ hours of airtime. In case you're not familiar with the XL65, this on top of the engine is the radiator. Those 3 panels you see are the louvers, so that you can control the airflow across the radiator depending on what the temperature is like out, and the engine coolant temperature is monitored inside the cockpit, of course. And I've implemented a single lever control for the radiator louvers to make it quite easy to manage in flight. There are 2 cylindrical tanks, one on either side of the radiator. Those are the injection oil reservoirs for the 2-cycle engine, so you don't have to pre-mix gas for any of this. One of the features that is not standard on this airplane is that all of this external metal work is powder coated rather than just painted, so it's extremely durable. It's painted to match the rest of the exterior of the aircraft, but there are no paint chips or scratches, and the paint does and will remain in excellent condition. I will go over some of the other features that are unique to this aircraft. The paint is Endura white and a nice garnet colored red. It's a little bit sparkly with some gold auto trim. I've done things like replace the default plastic trim tab with an aluminum one, which will hold up to the stress of the buffeting from the propeller better. And there are a number of other features internally that you can't see. One is that the fuel tanks in the wings are normally, according to the factory design, configured to feed gasoline down to the engine using plastic fuel tubing, the standard vinyl Bing and approved fuel tubing. And when Tom McClatchy and I were building our aircraft, we decided we didn't like the idea of having to replace tubing inside the wing every 2 years or every year. And so we had a friend with expertise in kit building, and with factory approval, we replaced the in-wing fuel lines with aircraft aluminum fuel system. And then they're spliced into the vinyl system inside the fuselage of the airplane, where the 2 feeds from the 2 tanks meet and go through the fuel filter and so on. So that's one maintenance item that you don't worry much about compared to a standard XL65. And if I may duck under the wing here, I can also show you that the access to the exit of the fuel tank is covered with a standard aircraft access plate, so you can check the fuel fittings at the bottom of the fuel tanks on both sides. Among the many details, this pitot tube, which with the tire ups may not look like much, but the key is that it is flexible, so the accidental bumps that people occasionally make, passers-by bump into the pitot tube, won't break it or damage the fiberglass. The inside of the fiberglass nose cone here is also being reinforced with extra polyester resin to prevent cracking caused by the normal wear on the pitot tube if it does get hit. One of the details you'll see that's different from one Challenger to the next is the way the nose cone is attached. The simple, easy method of attaching the nose cone, because it's fiberglass and curved, but the side of the fuselage is straight, is just to leave a gap there. And this is my second Challenger. My first Challenger just had the gap there, and I found that it was drafty in the winter, and I wanted a more streamlined, faired look. So this is a very, very light built-up area on the metal frame. Uses aircraft plywood and some resin to curve the side so that it mates up perfectly with the nose cone. and it's a smooth fairing. It's very easy to get the nose cone fitted properly each time, and there are no air gaps. Now I know you want to see what the panel is like, so I'll give you a bit of a tour here. I apologize for the harsh lighting. We'll go over the instruments one at a time. This is an AVMAP Ultra EFIS. It is connected to the pedostatic system, and it provides a lot of capability. It contains a compass, GPS. It's saying no GPS at the moment because I'm inside my hangar. Altimeter, airspeed, vertical speed indicator, slip indicator, artificial horizon, and you can actually also use it as a navigation instrument, because if we push this button here and go to HSI mode, it will provide the ability to go to waypoints that are in its built-in GPS database, which you can update using the SIM card that plugs into the front there. So it also has an air data computer, so if you get it calibrated to have the compass setting correct, it will estimate current wind speeds for you and that kind of thing. I haven't really used that capability because I always check forecasts, and the main thing one is worried about, of course, is the amount of headwind or tailwind you currently have, and you can get that just by comparing airspeed to ground speed. So there's it's a very useful instrument. I wanted to have something like this because I'm a private pilot. I wanted to be able to navigate and be able to fly on instruments in case I ever foolishly got into snow streamers or to fog. That has never been an issue, of course, but every little bit of comfort is good. Moving back out a little, standard 2-pack, if you will. The airspeed indicator is a conventional airspeed indicator, and altimeter. I don't have a separate VSI. I use the Ultra EFIS for that. Going down to the left, this is a fuel flow computer. It's an MGL Stratomaster. There is a fuel flow transducer in the back of this aircraft just in front of the firewall, and so this accurately measures the fuel that's flowing from the tanks to the engine, and that is what I use as my fuel gauge. There are also fuel senders, but the angles of the senders in the tanks in this aircraft make the fuel registration a little bit inaccurate, and I like being able to do this. I found that the fuel flow to be an extremely accurate reading at all times. I always know how much gas I have. I just have to remember to reset it to 75 or 78 liters when I fill up the tanks, if I completely fill up the tanks. And I've also have a system for using a dipstick and a measurement of the underside of the wings angle with respect to the ground, so that I can verify the fuel quantity in the tanks before I take off. Next in the panel, I can say this, of course, is cabin heat. It's very effective in the winter. I've equipped this airplane with carburetor heat. It's an electrical heating of the carburetor throats in case we get weather where carb ice is an option. That's rare with two-stroke engines, but it does happen, and it was an option that cost no weight to add. This airplane has both nav lights, which is the red and green on the wingtips and white on the tail. That seems like a redundancy, but in fact it gets you the extra half hour of flying at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. If you're an early riser or someone who likes to fly in the evenings, it makes you legal before sunrise and after sunset. Strobe, and it's still day VFR, which is the only thing that you can fly this airplane in, of course. It also has regular anti-collision strobes and a landing light, which you may have noticed earlier in the video. that is bolted to the bottom of the nose cone. This is an MGL V6 radio. It's a 6-watt, very nice radio. I've had long distance conversations on it in the past, and the antenna and the cabling system is good. So I've had at the local flying school here, I have had instructors tell me that even though the cockpit is not the world's quietest cockpit, that they have no trouble understanding me. It's a very good radio setup. Moving further to the right, this is a Garmin 496 aviation GPS, which is in a dock called a gizmo dock in the middle of the panel, and it's usually my primary navigation instrument. You have to download the databases periodically to keep it up to date, but it's really effective and completely reliable, never crashes. A magnetic compass, that's not a big surprise, I guess. Moving right. Now, I live, you may not, in an area where there's a lot of transponder airspace. So this is a Microair T2000 Mode C transponder, and it is the requirement for landing a lot of places in southern Ontario where I live here, Kitchener, a lot of flying through Toronto airspace. And it's also just nice comfort of and peace of mind when I am flying past Hamilton airspace, for example. I can have my transponder on Mode C, and I talk to air traffic control, and they'll advise me of other traffic on the VFR routes and so on. I can get flight following. If I'm going east from Burlington across Toronto, I can fly through the Class C airspace at the moment, at least until ADFS becomes mandatory. And it can shorten the route substantially, depending on where I'm flying, as well as opening up a number of airports that otherwise wouldn't be open. Finally, this instrument on the right is a Stratomaster engine monitor, which has the tachometer, exhaust gas temperature, cylinder head temperature, and coolant temperature. When flying these airplanes with a water-cooled engine, the most important temperature is the coolant temperature, which is the flashing thing you see on the right. And a nice feature of this is, of course, you can see the flashing LED at the top saying that my engine is cold. Not surprising, because it's not running. And the flashing light will warn me if any of the parameters I've set get out of range. And you can set alarms for RPM limits and temperature limits. At the moment, at the top right corner, you see times and hub meter and flight time and so on. 5.23 is the number of hours on the engine. 12.3 is the number of volts that the electrical system is currently delivering. And that number at the top right is replaced with RPM when the engine is running. So it has, that's the most useful for the time tracking and for the engine monitoring. And I really like having the flashing light there. See these two knobs down at the right. I will not be able to demonstrate that to you exactly. These are my cell phone mounting system. I'm using my cell phone to take this video, so I can't show you how it works. But normally I mount my cell phone magnetically to those two balls, and I run ForeFlight, and it keeps track of my flight time as well and shows me where I am, and does all the other things that ForeFlight does. And it has the advantage that with an annual subscription, it automatically keeps the maps and the flight supplement and so on out of date. So I generally don't carry a lot of paper documents in the cockpit with me when I go flying. I'll keep a copy of the local VFR terminal area chart for the area where I fly, and but the CFS and the other pieces are all digital. I should probably say something about this, just in case you're wondering. This is a Nemo Scout, and it's a mesh radio network traffic management transponder that's used by the flying school at Burlington Executive Airport so that they can tell where their planes are. And because this plane, on floats, I'm flying downwind at 75 miles an hour. And their slowest aircraft is a Cessna 152 traveling at 90 knots. So I like to make sure that I am visible to them. I'm active on the radio. And this is just one little extra thing that means that if there's an instructor in the plane, they'll get a beep and a warning in their headset saying there's traffic nearby if I'm nearby. It's never actually been an issue for me because I'm active on the radio, and although this is not a mandatory frequency airport, people are always on the radio. So if the purchaser of this airplane doesn't end up at Burlington or at another airport that's using these transponders, then I will take it out and donate it to the flying school. There are some fuses in this airplane that are only for replacement under fairly catastrophic maintenance kinds of circumstances, like a direct short in an electrical system. Most of this electrical system is, however, run by breakers, and so these are the circuit breakers, and I have one of them is the top one is a pullable breaker, and that connects the alternator to the battery in case there should ever be a problem with a voltage regulator or something along those lines. I can pull that and I'll be running only after battery. Just a quick note about skis. I have, for this airplane, and are being sold with this airplane, there's a set of electrically retractable turbulence wheel skis. And they're very nice. I'll show them a little later in the video. But this is the 3-position switch, which one uses in the winter to either make sure the wheels are down or that the skis are down, depending on which surface you're landing on. I should have mentioned earlier, Aero Controls throttle quadrant. Absolutely the best and fabulous customer support. It locks very securely, it works well, and it's very easy to deal with the people in British Columbia who manufacture this. They're very responsive and very friendly. Rear seat, for those of you who are rear seat people. These are, of course, the rudder pedals for the back seat pilot. And you'll see that the control stick here is removable. I have it out at the moment, but it inserts with a bolt and a pin. And these are the headset jacks and the push-to-talk switch for the passenger, in case the passenger should want to talk on the radio. However, the intercom is live, so passengers don't normally need to touch that. This is a water holder for the pilot. It takes a bicycle water holder that takes a bottle of water. Baggage compartment. There's all kinds of stuff in it, including my first aid kit, obviously. There is some electrical stuff behind the back. I wanted this completely enclosed so nothing could bounce up and down and fall into the back of the airplane. So this piece of metal at the back is removable. It's held on with very strong Velcro. And you can fit quite a lot of stuff in here. And you can store stuff in it going all the way up. So when traveling, I have never had to have more than a knapsack in the back seat. Camping gear and spare oil and all that kind of stuff fits into the baggage compartment with no problem. Puddle jumper floats. There's really not much to say. These are quite lightly used sort of floats. No damage history, no wheel up landings, no fiberglass repairs. They're still perfectly watertight, and the plane is really, really fun to fly on floats. You can get into and out of all kinds of places you never would otherwise. And I just enjoyed tremendously flying this Challenger on floats and my previous one. I would do it again if I could. I should make another point about examples of small refinements that have been made to the plane, like this nice feed through to the custom seat back. I laid this up in fiberglass, and a friend manufactured the feed throughs to prevent belt chafing. Upgraded front 4-point shoulder harness, actual aviation seatbelt material rather than the factory standard. And these down tubes, there are 2 here and there are the 2 in the front of the plane. I've seen so many aircraft, including my first Challenger, where these were painted and they chipped and they looked quite ugly for a while, and they were very, very cold to the touch. So if you went flying in the winter and you grabbed one of those, your hands would try to stick to it. So before I assembled this plane and put the wings on, before I covered it in fabric, I covered these in heat shrink tubing. So this is now a nice soft, comparatively speaking soft, rubber covering that doesn't chip or crack or wear off, and it insulates the metal. So if you grab it in the winter when it's very cold, it doesn't chill your hands nearly so much. And it stays looking nice for years and years and years and years. That's a very important. It seems small, but it's a detail that made a difference to me, and it made a difference to how good the plane looks. Another example of small things, if you are familiar, you see this very securely velcroed in place. As you can see, this seat back is a solid piece. There's only a short piece at the top in the standard seat arrangement, and a lot of people find that uncomfortable. Your back tends to go through it. So there's a metal brace across the back and a larger panel here, and those things make the front seat much more comfortable than the standard Challenger, in my opinion and experience with 2 airplanes. Now that's very, very light aircraft plywood. Here is another refinement. When you're flying in the winter, the radiator has 2 sets of louvers, one on the top and one on the bottom. The bottom louver is only installed in the winter, but it generally has a separate lever for controlling it. And I decided that was too complicated, so I made a single lever control. There's a cable at the top and a cable at the bottom here, and that single lever opens and closes both louvers when both are installed. There's a lot of variation. This is approved again by the manufacturer's representative, and it just makes managing engine temperature simple as can possibly be. This is the release handle for the ballistic parachute, of course. And that is something, when you get flying these airplanes, you get used to managing the engine temperature and keeping an eye on the coolant temperature as you fly, and anticipating making small changes when you power down to make a descent to close the louvers slightly to keep the engine from cooling down more than you want it to. It's actually quite simple and easy to adapt to. So that was a good customization, I think. And as I like to tell people, there are many variations on the theme in different Challengers. And the way I like to explain that is that there must be 50 ways to lever your louvers. Get it? This is what the wingtip strobe and nav lights look like. They're very bright and incredibly lightweight LED field units. Very clever. So, that's the Millennium Pigeon, as I have dubbed this plane. You could, of course, unname it if you wish, simply by peeling off the letters. It's a terrific plane. It flies really nicely. I try to keep it below 90 miles an hour when it's on wheels. I generally cruise at 75 miles an hour on floats, at 56 or 5700 RPM on the engine. at which rate it burns about 25 liters per hour, so that's 3 hours of flying, including reserves. And it's just a heck of a lot of fun to fly.